Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben, and this is the Smoking Hot Confessions Barbecue Podcast. Hey family, I hope you're well wherever you are and you got that thin blue smoke rolling. This is episode 6 of season 7, and season 7 is completely focused all on the Australian barbecue scene. In fact, I'm so into the barbecue scene, I'm kicking off this season by talking to the top 5 ABA and KCBS teams. And today's guest is Lance Rosen of, now take a big sip of your drink, Big Boy Competition Barbecue Team, Big Boy Bricks and Mortar Barbecue Joint, Southern Grace Diner Bricks and Mortar Barbecue Joint, and Temples of Barbecue, the internationally awarded barbecue cookbook. So this is going to be a huge episode. So I hope you got an extra tall beer there with you to help you get you through it. So in this episode, we're going to find out. I mean, Lance is clearly obsessed with barbecue, so we're going to get the story behind how everything he's doing, how that started. We're going to get into the Temples of Barbecue cookbook with him as well, because that's got a fascinating story behind it, and it is very highly internationally awarded. So we're going to find out more about that. We're going to talk about the Big Boy Barbecue Competition Team. We're going to talk about Southern Grace Diner, his current barbecue joint that he's got running. We're going to talk about how his 2019 season went, his 2020 plans. We're going to talk about Camp Brisket. He just got back from the United States. How cool does Camp Brisket sound? If you're not sure what that is, you'll find out from Lance very soon. It is on my bucket list, so I am really keen to find out all about it. And we're going to round out the episode with a lesson on selecting ingredients. So Lance is going to give us a rundown on everything we need to know about choosing meats and other ingredients. So this episode is going to be absolutely jam-packed, and I cannot wait to get into it. So, let's not wait.
This is the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions Barbecue Podcast with your host, Ben Arnott. How long's it been since your last confession?
And Lance, welcome to the confessional, mate. How you doing?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, my friend, anytime. I'm glad that you're able to fit me in. You've got so many barbecue projects on the go at all the time.
My life is barbecue. What can I say?
Sorry, did you say my life is barbecue or my wife is barbecue?
Well, she likes me because I smell of barbecue.
Yeah, I'm lucky in that regard as well. My wife considers barbecue to be an aftershave or something, which is it's quite handy.
Barbecue cologne. There you go.
That's the word I was looking for. Cologne. Yes. All right. So as I said in the intro, you have got so many things going on. Before we get into each and every single one, take us back to the start. How did you get into barbecue?
In the very, very beginning, I always used to cook on charcoal. So being an exile or growing up in South Africa and moving to Australia, charcoal was our life. I mean, we never cooked barbecues or grills on gas. And my first restaurant, which I opened in 2005, was Rusk, South African's contemporary fine diner with charcoal grills. Charcoal grill that I had was custom made by a Yugoslavian guy in his back garden. And, we used to always cook on coals, and we used to use the coals at the end of the night to, wrap meats in silver foil, wrap a leg of lamb for the next day's special and cover it in the coals and cover it in the ashes or sweet potatoes or that kind of thing and run them as specials the next day. My brother-in-law moved to the US for work. He was supposed to only be there for a couple of years, and he's still been there, so a long, long time. And we went to go and visit, and they were in New York City. And on our last day, they walked us. They're like, well, we'll go out for a family dinner, take all the kids, take everybody out. And this is 2008, 2009. And we went to a barbecue joint called RUB, which is R-U-B, Real Urban Barbecue, which was a Kansas City-style barbecue joint, which I found out later underneath the Chelsea Hotel. I was really keen to be going because I'm a big, Janis Joplin, Bob Dylan fan, Jimi Hendrix, and they all wrote at the Chelsea Hotel. They, hung out there in the 60s and, way back then. So I was cool. Really keen. Yeah, I was really keen to go to the Chelsea Hotel. I was just like, I didn't know about barbecue. I'd read an article once upon a time about a guy called Ed Mitchell who did whole hog barbecue in the Carolinas. That was in a Severe magazine, and I pulled out the article and read it. I didn't really know much about it, And Anyway, so we sat down, and it was a very dodgy kind of dive bar, kind of a joint sports bar out the front, and rickety tables out the back, and little smoker out the front, which they had like the old red schoolhouse JR smokers. They put down a platter, and we just got a platter to share, and it was called the Baron, because it was Paul Kirk, who was the Baron of Barbecue, one of the founding members of the Kansas City Barbecue Society, was one of the partners in the business. Anyway, so my jaw kind of hit the ground, and it had everything, ham, sausages, brisket, ribs, chicken, turkey, you name it. It was, all the meats were there, pork, everything else. And, I ate this meat, and I was just blown away by the simplicity of it, and kind of just fell in love with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so your whole life has been basically turned around by just this chance introduction at a hotel that you were going to because you're into music at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what the worst thing was? It was the last night of my holidays. So we were flying out the next day. So I didn't get a chance to explore it any further, So I came back to Australia, and I'm like, right, I'm going to go and do barbecue. That was amazing. How do you do that, And, 2008, 2009, there wasn't a lot on the internet about it. And so first stop in those days, barbecues galore. That was the barbecue shop that everyone shopped at.
That's all there was, yeah.
Pretty much. And I walked into barbecues galore, and they didn't know what the hell I was talking about. Those the 4-burner gas hooded barbecues. That's what they called barbecue. That's all they knew in those days, and couldn't find anybody that had them. And, kind of sat in the back of my head, and I was doing different things at the restaurant at the time, trying to replicate this without actually having a proper smoker. And then about 4 or 5 months later, I found a guy who was bringing in pellet smokers, and I got a Weber Smoky Mountain, and I started playing with barbecues. Part of the issue I had back then in 2009, 2008, 2009 was there was no wood, there were no rubs, there was no fuel, none of that, no barbecue sauces, none of that existed. So everything I had to do, we kind of did from scratch. And the biggest issue I had with the Smoky Mountains was there was no wood. I really didn't like red gum for smoking. There's a little bit of iron bark around. I called a guy about some apple wood, and he's like, I'll just bring a chainsaw and a trailer and come and get some,
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of like nobody knew what I was talking about, and there was really no interest in what I was doing. So other than the fact that, the first special I put on at the restaurant was a pulled pork special. So I decided I'm going to do a barbecue plate as a special, and I did some pork, and I cooked it at home. I had my wife running and checking the temperatures for me, and then I ran home from the restaurant when it was ready, pulled it out in the afternoon, let it rest. I did some pit smoked beans, some coleslaw, some homemade barbecue sauce, and some chips. That was the platter. And I'm like, this is no way this is going to sell, and we used to open at 5:30 at night. At 6 o'clock, the first customers came in, and by 6:30 I'd sold every single portion I had. And people were just going absolutely bananas for it. The staff, the customers, everyone ordered it. The first person that ordered it, everybody saw it, and then that was it. So from there, I'm like, I've got to do more of this, and that kind of just got me going.
Yeah, it certainly would have been quite motivating to sell out in 30 minutes.
Pretty much. That's all we sold. You got all the other sections in the restaurant, and we had, a very substantial kitchen brigade at that time. And, that's all we sold. So that was great.
Yeah. And so then that sort of led into the Big Boy Barbecue joint. Was that right?
Pretty much. So we're coming up to the end of the year, and we always used to close like just around Christmas for about 3 weeks, Christmas and the first 2 weeks in January, because it's pretty quiet that time of year. And I said to my wife, I said to her, why don't we close the restaurant and do barbecue? And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, seriously, shut up, because, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist here. If somebody was interested in it, they'd be doing it. and I'm like, well, we should do it. And she's like, go back to sleep. It was 3 a.m. because that's when we have those conversations. Anyway, so, it wouldn't go away in my head. And we were pretty successful. The restaurant was, contemporary fine dining. We were booked out 2 weeks in advance. We were doing very, very nice food, and we were being really well recognised for what we were doing. Anyway, I talked her into it. We decided, right, we're going to close the restaurant down and we're going to do barbecue. So we did that, and then I decided, well, I can't do barbecue until I know more about it. So packed up the family and took a trip to Kansas City, because the first barbecue I'd eaten was Kansas City style barbecue. That's what I knew. So we went to Kansas City. I'm like, we're going to go to Kansas City and we're going to eat barbecue.
Makes sense to go back to where it all began.
Pretty much. So that's what we did, and met a whole heap of people. Very lucky to the Kansas City Barbecue Society were having their gala dinner in Kansas City that year. When I Googled what's on in Kansas City, I saw that. So I, joined the Kansas City Barbecue Society, and I'm like, I'm going to go to the dinner and try and meet some people. And I knew nobody. I really knew nobody, and I knew nothing about. I really didn't know a lot about the scene of barbecue. And this is now 2010, end of 2010, 2011.
So how do you handle a situation like that when you're walking into the KCBS annual dinner and sort of you don't know anybody and you don't really sort of know a whole lot about what you're talking about with barbecue? You just sort of walk in and pick someone and shake their hand and say, hi, I'm Lance and I like barbecue.
Pretty much, not really. Well, what happened was you got to walk up and you got to go to the registration desk and get your name badge, right? So I walk in, I go, hi, I'm Lance Rose, and I want to, can I grab my name badge? And they go, you Australian? I'm like, yes, I am. They go, do you know Bob? I'm like, Bob? Who the hell, like, seriously, it's a big country. Who the hell is Bob? They're like, no, do you know Bob? I'm like, yeah, it's a big country, And they're like, all right, you got to get with Bob, I'm like, all right, who the hell is this Bob guy, right? Anyway, so every person I met was like, do you know Bob? You're Australian. Where are you from? Do you know Bob? I'm like, because they love the accent. And, it's kind of unusual for an Australian person to be in Kansas City in the middle of nowhere, Anyway, so Bob turned out to be this guy whose name is Robert Carruthers, who's passed on, unfortunately. And I meet Bob and Robert, and he turns out that he is the partner of Carolyn Wells, who is the First Lady of Barbecue and one of the founding members of the Kansas City Barbecue Society. And he's this Australian guy from northern New South Wales who was in Kansas City and knew a lot about barbecue and was about to set up a travel company doing adventure tours, barbecue tours through American South. And, so we were chatting and he introduced me to Carolyn, who I didn't know who she was, but this is my partner Carolyn, this is this one and that one. And they had, people out there with displaying barbecues and goods and stuff like that. So I took a bit of a showcase. So I walked around, I met the guys from Yoda. I mean, I didn't know anything about Yoda brand. They'd kind of been starting up and they were talking about maybe we'll come to Australia and there's nothing in Australia yet, that kind of trip. Anyway, so they go, well, why don't we catch up for a coffee over breakfast tomorrow? So I'm like, oh, that'd be great. So we sit down and I say to them, look, I've fallen in love with barbecue. I'm out here to have a look and see what it's all about. And they were like, right, we know exactly who to put you with, right? You're going to go to speak to this person and we're going to introduce you to that person. And they pretty much introduced me to everybody I needed to go and speak to, starting off with the guys at Joe's Kansas City, And I met a guy there by the name of Doug Wargle, who is the marketing manager of Joe's Kansas City. And they pretty much walked me in. I said, hi, I'm Lance. So they sent me to come and say hello to you. And they made the call before I got there. And he's like, fantastic. We're very excited that you want to take barbecue to Australia and that it doesn't exist there yet. And, let's walk you around. And this is our production manager and, spend as much time with whoever you want to spend time with and chat. And they pretty much gave me production timelines and recipes and spoke to me about, answered every single question I had, and, it was like that. It was just very generous. And for me, that was probably the biggest surprise and the introduction to barbecue is how generous everybody was, generous with their knowledge and their time.
God, that's an amazing opportunity to get that kind of detailed information from Joe's. We went there. We went to Kansas City last year for the MBBQA conference, and the MBBQA people took us to Joe's and Slaps and Plowboys. And they took us to the original Joe's down underneath the old... It's still a functioning gas station, but the barbecue stuff's all downstairs underneath, and then the ground floor is half gas station, half barbecue joint. And it was phenomenal. The food there was amazing. So that is an incredible opportunity you had right there.
It really was. And I mean, at the same time as this is going on, there's still this Kansas City Barbecue Society conference, Team of the Year stuff, all that kind of stuff. So there's a guy by the name of Rob McGee who's was smoking hogs on the Hilton, I think was his team name. And he then went to go and open Q39. So
wow.
I met him there, and he's like at the Hilton near the airport, which is miles away from everything. He's like, so I'm like, oh, can I come for lunch? And so I went out there and had a chat to him, and he said, look, I'm about to leave here. I'm about to open my own place, and tell me about what you're planning on doing. And we had a chat about, where we wanted to go, because my background is also in kitchens 4- and 5-star hotels, which I'd run, as well as, French fine dining where I started out. So we had a lot in common, and we had a good chat about that. And it was just absolutely amazing time, because you meet these people and you really don't know who they are in the society or in the community at large, and you've just met these people, and you're no threat to anybody because you're not opening up down the road from them, and everybody's very excited that you're interested in their passion and that you're going to introduce it in another country. So everyone was incredibly generous, and I think that's one of the massive lessons I learned very early on, is that lesson about barbecue family and about sharing and about growing with people's help, because nobody gets there on their own.
No, you're absolutely right. And that is one thing I'm really happy has transferred across when the barbecue culture has made the jump across the Atlantic, is that generous spirit has come with it.
Yes, absolutely. I think, there's when the competition realizes that by supporting each other we can grow the community, when the restaurants support each other rather than trying to take a stab at each other, I think that's a very big turning point. And I think we're kind of getting there now,
Definitely. So this trip that you were talking about that you took to Kansas City, was that the kickstart of the Temples of Barbecue tour?
No, that was way, way, way before.
Oh, okay. So we're not even there yet.
No, that was 2009, 2010. Anyway, so what happens? Well, I came back, I opened my barbecue restaurant, and we had, the first barbecue restaurant in Melbourne, possibly Australia, and the first bricks and mortar. I know there was like Paul from Silver Creek had the smokers, but, nobody was really talking about barbecue. It wasn't even a conversation. Until, we were discovered by some food writers, and they started writing about us, and barbecue started gaining traction in Australia as it was overseas as well, similar time frame. Anyway, so, what happens is you've got a barbecue restaurant and people are coming in and discovering barbecue, and so you talk about barbecue all day. I'm going to the US, where should I go? Where should I go here? Where should I go there? And I turned around to my wife and I said to her, we should write a book. You should do a barbecue tour around America and write a book. So that was 2014. That's now 3 or 4 years later. 4 years later. So spoke to a photographer friend of mine. I'm like, oh, look, we're thinking about doing a book. Would you be interested in doing photographs? He was an ex-chef by the name of Dean Cambray, who had Cambray's restaurant in Melbourne. When I was doing fine dining, he was the other, major fine dining joint. And he turned around to me and he went, go now. Don't wait. Go and do it. He goes, barbecue, people are starting to get interested. Don't tell anybody about what you're doing. Just go and do your trip. Come back and write the book. He goes, I just finished another cookbook. I know editors. I know layout people, design people. He goes, I can help you pull it all together. I had a quick meeting with an editor. I had a quick meeting with a design person, and we pretty much went and booked the trip. So we said to the kids, "Oh, do you want to come with, or this is business, because they've been on a few trips with us before, and they're a bit younger then, and they weren't that keen, but they were like keen to come along." And we decided, well, the proviso of the trip is going to be what? You've got to have a guideline about where you're going to go and how you're going to choose places. So what we decided was we're going to go to the 4 main barbecue regions in America, which is Texas, Memphis, Kansas City, and the Carolinas. And we're going to look for the temples of barbecue, the places where people go to worship the gods of smoke and meat. Hence the name Temples of Barbecue. That's how that came around. So we decided, if there's more than one place, we're going to go to the original. And we're not going to look for the latest and greatest. We're going to look for those iconic barbecue joints, the places that are established, the places that that they've been cooking on wood, and they're cooking on wood and smoke forever. So that's how we determined where we were going to go and plotted out this trip and went and did this barbecue trip, and it was pretty full on. I mean, I was writing, taking notes everywhere I was going. I was coming back to the room. I was uploading photos so that the people involved in the book could see where we were going. I was writing notes every day. I was writing about the book every day before I went to bed. Get 2 or 3 hours sleep, get up and do it all again the next day. And we would have done 4,000 miles, 8,000 k's, Perth and back plus, from Melbourne, and so did the trip, did 70 odd barbecue joints in about 3 weeks, which is pretty full on.
70.
Yep.
In 3 weeks.
Yep, pretty much.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, the most recent trip I did, which was Texas, I did 10 days and I did 25 barbecue joints in about 10 days.
Oh,
and I had
wow.
in those 10 days, I had 2 days at Camp Brisket, so I wasn't traveling. So it was about 8 days of barbecue travel. So I have barbecue issues. I'm quite happy to admit that. Anyway, so yeah, we came back, we wrote the book, and through a whole chain of events, we were nominated for and received the award for Best Barbecue Cookbook in the World in 2015. So we did the road trip in 2014, September, and the book was published in 2015. And in 2016, we got the award for 2015 for the Best Barbecue Cookbook in the World, which is surreal. I mean, I wasn't even going to go to the award ceremony. When they let us know we were in the last 3, they basically sent us you go through a process where they go, "Oh, you've been nominated for Best Barbecue Cookbook in Australia." And that was, well done, you got the Best Barbecue Cookbook in Australia. And so I'm high-fiving everybody. And as far as I was concerned, that was a win. And then you get an award and an email saying, "Oh, by the way, you're on the short list for Best in the World." And you go, "Oh, well, who's on the list?" And that year was Franklin Barbecue and a few other places. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way we're going to win that. Like, seriously, I mean, I'm an ex-South African Australian writing about American barbecue, Anyway, so the final email was, "Look, you're down to the last 3. You're in the final 3. Please come to the award ceremony." And I'm like, well, why would I do that? Like, as if I'm going to win,
Yeah.
And it ended up going, and we ended up winning. And honestly, I was shaking like a little girl for hours afterwards. And, it was an amazing thing. And sometimes still got to pinch myself because, who wins the award for Best Barbecue Cookbook in the World? I mean, you would never expect that.
And as you said, up against some big names too, like Franklin's barbecue book there as well. I mean, that's a phenomenal achievement.
Yes, well, I mean, this is worldwide. There's barbecue books from the UK and people doing barbecue, not only American style barbecue, but barbecue all over the world. There was an English guy, there was Franklin's, there was people in Europe as well, where barbecue has taken hold as well. So, amazing, and very, very honoured to have received that award.
Yeah. And so was this about the time that you started putting together your ideas for Southern Grace Diner?
No, that was about 2015, 2016. So we kept running Big Boy Barbecue. We opened up to 3 different stores, and as after the 3rd store opened, we got a short lease on a location that we liked. When the lease came up, the landlord was playing silly buggers with us, so we ended up closing the 3rd store. We went back to the 2 stores, and then in just going back now. Last year, 2019, end of 2018, I was like, well, I'm not loving what I'm doing anymore. I'm just not enjoying it. It's the same old. We're very much tied into the menu the way it was, and I just wasn't enjoying what I was doing. So I kind of felt like I needed to do a change. We were doing different specials. The business kind of took us in a direction. It gets a life of its own, if I can put it that way. So when we started, because there was no woods and there was no smokers, we started off cooking on pellets. And then when we moved to our second store, it was in the city and there was a rooftop bar and they wouldn't let us put a smoker in the shop. So we ended up smoking off site and running the food in, doing all of that kind of stuff. So the business kind of just takes you where it takes you, it gets a life of its own. And I kind of felt like I wanted to do more of an artisanal style barbecue, and I kind of felt that the barbecue community and the barbecue knowledge of the people around us had changed and grown up. We were no longer doing an introductory to barbecue, basic barbecue, which is kind of the way we started our menu, and kind of felt that we were tied into what we'd originally done. And we couldn't, once we were going to change what we were doing, we might change and come up with a whole new concept. So I'd fallen in love with, I have a love of home style food. I guess that's what it comes down to. And Southern food. I mean, I've done this barbecue trip where we wrote the book, but I've done several other trips to the US and been to lots of different places in the South specifically. I mean, I have a massive love for the South and small town America. And some of my favorite dining is in little diners and little restaurants where, you're getting home style food. So we discovered this style of food called Meat and Three, which was started off in Nashville, and canteen style where, you pick your meat, be it fried chicken or meatloaf or barbecue ribs or whatever you get, pick your sides and canteen style and sit down and eat. And for me, it was very reminiscent of Australia and I guess the 70s and 80s and pub style food in Australia where you get your roast and your veg and your home style food, And more and more what I've noticed was that people are not cooking at home. People are getting a lot of takeaways, and people kind of had a nostalgia, or I have a bit of a nostalgia towards home style cooking of the grandmothers and the mothers, and so this style of food, the Meat and Three, was something that kind of appealed to me, and soul food in itself. And for me, barbecue is a part of soul food. When you look at soul food, what soul food is, barbecue is one component of soul food.
Now, is soul food like a specific genre of food in terms of meats and veggies, or is soul food the affective domain attached to that food? So is it soul food if it reminds you of family and home, or is it soul food if it ticks box A, B, C of ingredients?
Well, I think soul food is a Southern style of food, and it encompasses many things. So it's comfort food. It's also often food of the poorer people, and when you're thinking secondary cuts and oxtails and things like that, and candied yams and barbecue and whole hog barbecue and, brisket, for example. Brisket is a secondary cut and was often not used on the table of the more affluent people because, it was tougher and needed to be cooked longer, and so it was given to the poorer people. It's cheaper, and so that's kind of where soul food fits in. So it ticks some boxes like that, but I think it also ticks the comfort boxes as well, comfort food, and so when you think about your nana and your mother and the food that they cooked when you were younger. And, for us in Australia, soul food might be, Vegemite and cheese sandwich, or a toast. No, well, it might very well be, because that's, when you're not, if you're Jewish and you're sick and you eat chicken soup, that's soul food, food for the soul, I think it kind of relates to that. But the soul food that I'm talking about is more specific to the American South, and the small towns that I love so much. My love affair with the American South and small towns, So one of the things about the concept, so I decided I needed to take a break from what I was doing because I was getting very frustrated and not happy with what we were doing, and I wanted to take a bit of a break. I had this idea for soul food in the back of my head, and went on another, road trip, because that's what you do when you need to take a break. You need to get away and you need to just relax and think about it, And with the soul food thought in mind, I traveled to places where I thought I might see stuff that would spark my interest and my energy again for the style of food that I'm talking about. So we traveled through. This was September 2018, and it was the year of my 50th and one of my really good school friends' 50th. So we did this road trip together. So we went. It's a big trip. So we went Kansas City, because all good things start in Kansas City. And I've got so many people that I love there that you just, it's like seeing family. So you've got to go and catch up with everyone. So we went Kansas City to St. Louis, Missouri, to Cape Girardeau, which is where Old Hickory is made. I wanted to go and see the factory there. Oh. And then we went to Nashville. Now, Nashville, oh my God, is one of the most amazing cities. It's really happening and it's really vibey. And Meat and Three was founded and kind of started in Nashville, Tennessee. So we did the country music in Nashville, and then from Nashville we went through Memphis, obviously Graceland, all that kind of stuff, and then we went to a place called Clarksdale, Mississippi. Now, if you're a blues fan, Clarksdale, Mississippi is where Robert Johnson did his deal with the devil at the crossroads, and is the home of the Delta Blues. So my friend and I are very much into Delta Blues. So we stayed in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and Morgan Freeman has a club called Ground Zero Blues Club in Clarksdale, Mississippi. And we went along to all the Delta Blues museums, B.B. King Museum, awesome. All that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was amazing. And spent some time in Mississippi and drove down through Mississippi all the way down to New Orleans, so we've done country, we've done blues, and then we get to New Orleans and we're doing jazz, So we did jazz and the food and all that kind of stuff in New Orleans, which is amazing. And then drove across the Gulf of Mexico to Savannah, Georgia, which has been on my bucket list for a very long time, and ate some amazing soul food there as well. So, and that was the trip, which kind of left me with this desire to do Meat and Three. And when I say meat, I'm talking specifically barbecue and three, with the idea of doing high quality meats, but then being able to represent them and support them with high quality vegetable dishes, soul food dishes that were nostalgic, that your grandparents and mum might have made, and trying to bring back like a family mealtime is kind of what it was about. So we only open on Sundays, and for the people that are coming after church, and family get-togethers, family, parents and their kids having a family meal together, because I kind of feel that people aren't doing that anymore, and they're not doing it as much as they should. So that was the whole idea behind the concept. And the concept is it's all cooked fresh to order, and when it's gone, it's gone. So we might have 5 or 6 different meats on a day, and we might have 18 to 20 different side dishes every day that we're open. But once they run out, they run out. So I'll make one big platter of whatever vegetable we're doing, and I might have a few spare, but that's kind of the way that works.
18 to 20 side dishes. How do you come up with all those different ideas?
I read a lot, and I love food, and I love reading about food. I have a minor cookbook obsession, which is actually a major cookbook obsession. I've been buying cookbooks for 25, 30 years. I got a delivery today from Amazon. We love Amazon. Anyway, so, I'm constantly reading and I'm constantly challenging myself. And one of my personal goals for this new concept was that every week that I'm open, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to do a new recipe that I've never done before. And I'm going to do a new dish, and I'm going to try something different every week. So the challenge for myself was, be it a pie, or be it a vegetable, be it a side, or be it a new style of meat, or a new rub, or whatever else. I'm going to force myself to do new things, and force myself to try new things and explore that. And some weeks they'll work, and some weeks they won't work. I try to do a St. Louis gooey butter cake, which is a St. Louis speciality, and I cooked that cake 4 different times, and I really wasn't happy with it. But I think I've got a recipe on the way that I'm going to try shortly. So this last weekend, just having come back from my Texas trip, there were a few dishes that I'd never done before. I did a pecan nut pound cake with chocolate sauce. I did a carrot flan or a carrot souffle, which I saw in Tejas Barbecue in Tomball, Texas. And I did a jalapeno and apple coleslaw that I saw in Puska Family Barbecue in Hutto, Texas. So just trying new things and just trying to keep being dynamic and keep giving people something fresh to come back from.
You're listening to the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions podcast with massive barbecue nerd Ben Arnott.
Well, mate, that all sounds absolutely incredible, and I guess brings us into the 2019 competition circuit. So it obviously went really well for you. You did really well in the KCBS ladder. Tell us about 2019 in terms of your competition barbecue side.
It's an interesting one. I wasn't actually sure how many competitions I was going to do last year, and the bug gets you. And
it does.
I don't know how many I did in there, and probably about 10 comps, every single KCBS comp in Australia. So we travelled all over for that. And it's interesting because at one stage we were leading the competition. And the way they did last year was they had the best of 3 competitions, and with the bonus points, 35 odd teams plus, you'll get your bonus points for that. So we did a lot of the small comps as well. I pretty much did everything. And, in the end, we ended up down to the last comp of the year. We were second, and Paul from King and His Q was chasing us down. I did the calculation before we went, and I worked out that because of the bigger competitions that he'd done, if he'd scored third or up, he would have taken it out, and I needed to get GC to actually get up there. So it was going to be a points battle right to the end. We ended up being third, knocked out of second place by 1 point, but had a fantastic year. It was a good year.
Yeah, that must have been tense. It came right down to the wire at the last competition of the year. That was Smoking in the Valley in Perth, wasn't it? That was where I saw you over there.
It was, yes. So on Cup Day in Australia, in Melbourne, there was a competition at Cranbourne Racecourse. Paul came down for that. And, at that stage, he kind of did the points count and was like, I'm going to go to Perth. I wasn't going to go to Perth until I found out he was going, because he would have knocked me out of second place. So with like 2 days to spare, I'm like, all right, I've got to go. He's going. I have to go as well. Lucky a really good friend of ours over there from Molly's Smokehouse, Jason and Bundy, weren't competing that weekend because it was his birthday. So I called up and went, can you help me out with gear? He goes, look, I'm not competing that weekend because it's my birthday. I'll give you all my gear. I got a comp kit sitting there waiting to go. So I grabbed all of his gear. I was cooking on, every smoke I'd never cooked on before, and just packed up my gear, and with 2 days' notice was out there doing a comp. So that was pretty full on. It was great.
So did you basically just like grab your knife roll and some rubs, sauces and injections and jump on the plane?
Pretty much. Rubs, sauces, injections, and my meats and knives, and off we went. That was it.
Oh, right. Okay. So you took your all your meats over with you?
Yeah, my fly-in, fly-out strategy, my first time I flew in and flew out to do a comp, I spoke to butchers where I was going, and they were going to put meats aside. But you know what happens is they don't get to age up the meats properly for you, and you really don't know what it is you're getting until you land. So the stress of that was just, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm actually going to prep my meats here, get my meats that I'm happy with, and make that selection and take them with me. So I take them with me. So that's when I fly in to do a comp, rubs, sauces, injections, and I've got it down to the minimal amount of kit that I need, 1 tub of sauce, 1 tub, the rubs, and I don't cook a lot of meat at a comp. I cook 1 brisket. I cook 2 pork butts. I cook 3 or 4 ribs, and I cook maybe 14 pieces of chicken. So I don't cook a hell of a lot of meat because it gets really expensive if you're doing 10 comps a year.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that at all. I'm an ultimate tight ass when it comes to competition barbecue when I'm competing, and like I'll still lay down $1,000-$1,200 per competition without even trying.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have to blink. I mean, you're getting a decent quality Wagyu brisket, and you're spending $150 to $200 for a brisket. If you get two of those, it's $400. And so if you do 10 comps, that's another $2,000 extra a year by cooking 2 briskets. So I used to cook 2 briskets, and a good friend of mine, Kurt from Fastlane, turned around and went, "Well, if you cook one, you really can't stuff it up. You really have to look after it." I'm like, you know what? You're right, because if I've got 2, if I stuff one up, I've still got the other one as spare. So I cook less, and you've just got to baby that thing. You can't let it go because you've only got the one. So it's an interesting strategy.
It is, but I do know that you are quite fond of the mini beers. So how does that go with in terms of not accidentally knocking over that jar of sauce, or making sure you keep a keen eye on that brisket? Are you doing that old trick on us where we all throw our heads back for the shot and yours goes over the shoulder? What's happening there?
Hell no. You can't waste good alcohol. Mate, anybody can do it sober.
Yeah, true.
All right.
True.
Anybody can cook a piece of meat sober. We want to have as much fun as possible. We do drink. I try the night before the comp. I try to ease back a bit, but we got our beverage rituals. Usually at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's bourbon coffee, and 9:22, it's the shots. We do shots, good luck shots with whoever's around us. We do go through quite a lot of bourbon over the weekend, and then the other turn-in strategy is when you start turning in chicken, that's when you start drinking hard. And you got turn-ins every half an hour, so, you got a couple of hours of hard drinking. By the time you get to your brisket's done, you're done,
Both you and the brisket are done.
Pretty much.
Now, I came in late on that 9:22 shot over in Perth. What's the significance of 9:22?
Well, in the US, it was the 9:22 was good luck shots. I think it's before, everything's on, everything's got time, and I'm not sure about the exact significance of 9:22 itself, but I know that that's when you do good luck shots. And a lot of people in the US changed that to 9/11 after, the attacks. But we still go with 9:22, and I think it's about camaraderie and getting people together and wishing people good luck. And very often, the people who come to 9:22 shots do well. There's been times where it's been grand champions and reserve grand champions that were all at 9:22s. So that's come around, have shots with me, and you might stand a chance, might help. You never know.
I'm still sticking by the theory that you're getting everybody else loaded and tossing yours over the shoulder.
Oh, no, most certainly not. I think the first grand championship I won, I think it was an afternoon where I was very, very drunk. One of the guys was pouring me bourbons, and somebody came up to me and went, "Oh, what beer are you drinking?" Because he'd filled up the cup with so much bourbon that it looked like it was a beer.
Oh God!
I was pretty plastered, but we have fun with that, and it's the night before I stop drinking. I don't drink the night before a comp much, and during the day, the Saturday, if you're turning in on a Sunday and you're cooking Saturday night, I'll drink on the Saturday, but the Saturday night I stop. And then, Sunday morning at 6 a.m., bourbon coffees, and we start up again. So just try and keep focused on that and move forward that way.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so 2019, how's that set you up for 2020? What do you got planned?
Well, it's interesting. I compete a lot on my own. Occasionally I have people that run boxes for me and turn in, but very often, I'm cooking my meat and doing my own turn-ins. So it's given me a lot of confidence in my abilities to do what I'm doing and not be reliant on other people. I'm ready, I kind of feel like my system came together really well towards the end of the year. There are a lot of little tips and tricks that I do that I can do it on my own. For example, at 11 a.m. before the first turn in at 12, I'll heat up all my sauces and I'll put them in a flask and I'll put them in my Cambro. So during the turn-in times, I don't have to worry about heating any of the sauces. Everything's ready to go. So little things like that. But, it gave me a real fire for this year coming up, 2020. First comp of the year is next weekend at the Governor's Cup Invitational in Perth. I'm going to try out a few new rubs and combos and things like that, a few new flavour profiles, and have a bit of fun with it this year, I think. This is my third year competing seriously.
Yeah, and so do you only compete in KCBS?
Yeah, at the moment, that's what I'm doing. There's a lot of points across the two different sanctioning bodies. I was very lucky. My first year competing, I competed in both. Last year, I was asked to be on the International Board of Advisors for the Kansas City Barbecue Society, which I accepted. And I kind of felt that once you're in those kinds of positions, you just need to stick with where you are, and I don't feel any animosity or anything towards ABA. I have competed in ABA before, and a lot of the guys compete in both. But if I'm going to give my attention to one ladder, I guess I don't have enough time or money to compete in both to make it worth my while. So I'll just go with KCBS because that's where I am at the moment.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because if you can do 10 competitions in a year, you're going to be splitting it 5 and 5, or just pick one and give it 10 good goes.
Well, I'd rather give it 10 good goes. I mean, that's kind of the way I am. I do love the comps, and I will go to a comp and just hang out, drink, and turn in meat. And, King Valley is a great one for social comp, and it's not always about the ladder and about the points. Burleigh was like that as well, where you go and you hang out and you do what you do. And, if you turn in food, even better, But, it's a bonus, right? You might go along and you might compete and have fun. And if you don't turn in something, well, you don't turn it in. But, there's that social aspect. And I love the social aspect of the competitions. It's my weekend away, and it's my relaxed time, And I guess I'm cooking barbecue, but it's barbecue sport, if you would. So even for my relaxing time, I'm cooking barbecue. When I'm working, I'm cooking barbecue, and when I'm relaxing, I'm cooking barbecue. But it's very different, And catching up with the old friends and all the people that are in the community is really and truly what the barbecue competitions are like for me. If I get a call, even better. But that's not why I go. I'm not that serious that I won't have a drink and do shots with everybody else, and we have a laugh and we have a bit of fun. But for me, it's about the people, very much so.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said. I love the way you phrased that. Fantastic. Now, I've been waiting all evening to talk about this. Camp Brisket. What is Camp Brisket? I know what it is, but tell the audience because I am wrapped in this idea.
So in 2011, something like that, early on, about 9 years ago, Foodways Texas, which are an organisation that preserve the food of Texas, came up with this idea to do Camp Brisket. The idea was in relation with Foodways Texas and Aaron Franklin and Texas A&M University, which is Agricultural University in College Station, which is halfway between Austin and Houston, came up with this idea that, well, Texas is known for brisket. We want to teach about brisket, and we're going to talk about it from a food science perspective, which is Texas A&M University people. And then they're going to get all these pit masters to come on a panel and talk about the wood and the smoke and everything else and all the other practical sides of things. And what they do is they're going to cook a whole heap of briskets and give everybody comparisons and then judge the briskets and let everybody see how that turns out. So the first year they had it, it was basically, if you want to come along, you've got to be a member of Foodways Texas and you've got to just apply online. And the first 50 people that get in will come to Camp Brisket. Now, I'm in Australia and I'm like, okay, it was midday, I think, in Texas, and it was 3 a.m. our time. And I'm like, right, I'm going to jump online, and I waited up for it, and I'm filling in my name, and I get this message pop up going, well, Camp Brisket's full. So they had, I mean, our internet's pretty slow over here, right? So I think what happened is they had 50 places, and I think they had 3,000 people applied the first year.
Oh my God.
They went, okay, this is not going to work. So what they did was, right, if you're a member of Foodways Texas, which is your starting point, and you register to go to Camp Brisket, your name will go into a hat and we'll draw names. That's it. And then the longer you've been in the draw, the higher your chance of getting a draw. So I've been in the draw for 6 or 7 years now. And at the beginning of last year, I'm like, is there any point in me doing this? I've cooked a lot of brisket. I've cooked in competitions. I know a lot about brisket. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to chuck my name in the hat and I'm going to see if I get a draw. And I got drawn. So I was actually very stressed about whether or not to go. I spoke to a few different guys that cook barbecue in restaurants and everything else, and spoke to a few friends in Texas. And they basically said, come, you'll meet some amazing people. And very much, I think at some point, cooking barbecue and brisket specifically becomes about the 1%ers. When you can cook a brisket and you can cook some barbecue, the 1%ers that make the big difference make a big difference. You know, you're not going to learn how to cook a brisket from scratch, but you're going to learn 1 or 2 things that are going to make a massive change to the final product of what you do. And I'm all about 1%ers. So I'm like, I'm going to go. So went along and we had people like Miss Tootsie and Kerry from Snows were talking, and Russell Regals from Regals Barbecue in Houston, and John Brotherton from Black Iron and Liberty Barbecue, and Wayne Moore, and the list goes on, right? And you got all these guys that are there. I ended up sitting next to people like Byron Chisholm from Byron's Butt Rubs.
Oh, he's a funny guy, isn't he?
He's hysterical, you know. And I mean, people that have been in barbecue for a long time. Daniel Barrett from Diva Barbecue, and you know, so all these people that are there, right? And everyone's just interested in barbecue and interested in sharing. And there's a lot of, you know, first timers, but there's also a lot of restaurant people and people that are interested in barbecue. And it was just absolutely amazing. 2 days of eating and talking about brisket.
That's absolutely fascinating that they had 50 spots, 3,000 applicants. Instead of making the event bigger, they've kept it that small size and they've made it like a complete ballot draw.
And it's only 1 a year. I think they upped the take to 60, 70 people. And that's all that they have coming in.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
So it's a very tight group, and it's probably, I read an article somewhere that it's the hardest course to get into in America because there's that much demand for it and only a few spots. So I don't know if they'll do more in the future, but I loved it. I had a really great time. I met some amazing people and, you know, all about the 1%ers.
So it was absolutely then worth all the time and expense to get over there for Camp Brisket?
Absolutely. You know, they start off going, oh, here's 4 briskets, rate them. And then they come back later and they go, here's another 4 briskets, rate them. You don't know what you're rating. You're just trying briskets and you're having a look. So turns out it's different grades, it's cooked on different woods. And then what you do is you rate them and they give you the results. And they go, everyone preferred the Wagyu or the Choice or the Select or the whatever brisket it was, and the pecan wood and the mesquite wood came up as similar, you know, scoring, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you get like a whole heap of information in a very short time. And I'm actually running a brisket masterclass in March off the back of Camp Brisket, where we're going to cook about 10 different briskets, you know, grass-fed, grain-fed, Wagyu, hot and fast, low and slow, wrapped in silver foil, wrapped in peach paper, unwrapped, rested, not rested, and do a comparison on those as well. So as somebody said to me this weekend, I was talking to somebody about the class, they're like, it's going to take me 2 years to get that information on my own. I'm going to come to your class and get it all in one afternoon, you know, or one day.
Yeah, that's a top idea too. There's going to be so many shortcuts there for people that are interested in upping their brisket game.
Well, exactly right. I mean, you know, you get so many different brands and grades of briskets in this country. If you can just work out which one is which, and, you know, one of the things I teach in my class is doneness. I don't really work with thermometers, but I find a lot of people don't know to tell when a piece of meat is actually ready to go, you know. A lot of things that you see online are people saying, oh, my brisket was tough. And you go, well, was it, you know, tough and dry, or was it dry and crumbly, And more often than not, I think people undercook their briskets rather than cooking them further because they're too nervous to stuff it up. So that's one of the things that, we aim to teach in my classes. But, it's a lot of information and a lot of brute force knowledge, which I think a lot of people would benefit from. And
got a project you'd like to work on with the SHC team? Shoot Ben an email on ben@smokinghotconfessions.com and let's have a conversation.
Apologies for that rough button press there. I accidentally pressed it there. I do apologise. You were saying
no problem. I was rabbiting on as I get excited and get carried away with the things that I'm talking about.
No, I'm still learning how to use this new mixing board. I do apologise. You were saying that it's you were just wrapping up on your classes there.
I was just saying that a lot of people, it's going to save them a lot of time. To be able to cut to the chase, work out which brisket to use, which wood they prefer, how they would like to wrap it, and when it's ready. So it saves them experimenting at home.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Now, one of the things that I've been doing with this series of interviews is I've been throwing it open to the guests, such as yourselves, to nominate a topic of your choosing to give a lesson on, to the listeners on. And most people will choose a protein, or we've had someone choose a particular type of smoker. You've gone for something a little bit more abstract. You've gone lesson on selecting ingredients. So unpack that for us. Tell us all about this.
I think barbecue is a simple style of cooking. It's meat and fire and smoke and time, and that's all it is. So you've got nowhere to hide. So if you have a good quality product, it shines. If you have a bad quality product, you can tell immediately, And a lot of people argue and say, look, barbecue was, cheaper cuts of meats and made to be tasty. I agree with that 100%. But, talking brisket or talking chicken or talking ribs, you can go to Costco for one and go to their rib fridge and go through and just pick the three that are on top. Or you can do what I do and go dumpster diving or fridge diving at Costco and pull out every single rib and look at every single piece of meat. And what I do is I go through the fridge. I'll make, a pile of, maybe ribs, definite ribs, and, ribs I don't want. So I pull them out and then put them back in. And I'll have a look at every single rib that's there, and I'll try and choose the quality that I'm after, because there's a variation in quality in the same brands, be it for meat, be it for rubs, be it for fruit and vegetables. You go and stand and pick an avocado at the supermarket. Half the avocados that are soft because people have picked them up and squeezed them to see if they're ripe. And so being able to choose a quality ingredient, I think will give you a quality finished product, whatever it is you're cooking. Be it chicken, you can go for battery chicken, or you can go for free range, or you can go for organic chicken. And I really feel with chicken as one thing, you really get what you pay for, and so tasty meats and things that you want to actually put in your mouth and eat and swallow and feed your family and friends. I think when it comes down to quality ingredients, I think the proof is in the pudding and the proof is in the final eating. And I think you get what you pay for.
Absolutely. Now, the first thing that pops into my mind is tomatoes. I find there's a huge difference between tomatoes I grab at the supermarket and tomatoes that I grab from the Sunday markets down the street, the farmers markets. The ones from the farmers markets, they're homegrown, they're organic, they just taste amazing. You cut the thing open, you can smell it. It smells like a tomato. And the ones from the supermarket just don't. So when you're going out there and you're looking for stuff, let's start with meats. What are you looking for when you're looking at meats?
Well, first of all, if it's vacuum sealed, I'm making sure the vacuum bag's properly sealed. Doesn't have air bubbles in it. If I'm looking at the meat itself, I'm making sure it's not fizzy inside. I'm looking at the fat striations through the meat, not the thicker fat on the outside. I'm looking at the fat striations through the meat. I'm talking about brisket, pork, ribs, lamb, that kind of stuff. And that's what I'm looking for. So, pork ribs, for example, if I can see striations of fat through the muscle, I know that that's going to eat really well. If it's leaner, brighter, pinker meat, it means it's probably younger and there's not much fat within the meat itself rather than on top of the meat. And I know that that's going to eat drier, because low and slow, is going to dry that out. It can dry that out. We get We get a lot of younger meat in this country. People don't want to pay to have our animals fed longer and fattened up over time and let the flavour develop. You know, Neil Perry, very famous chef, turned around and said when you ask people about beef, they describe their beef as tender or not tender. They don't talk about flavour, you know, and hence we get a lot of yearling beef in this country, which is very young and very lean. And it's really not good cooking meat for barbecue, because if you're grilling it and you're grilling it medium rare, no problem. You know, when you put it on the smoke and you cook it low and slow or hard and fast, you know, it can dry out. So ribs, one of the biggest lessons I learned in pork ribs was with a young meat, the slower you cook it, the drier it gets. So I've been cooking my ribs hotter in about 3 hours at about 300 Fahrenheit and getting a really juicy rib.
Yeah, I had actually read, and it was the first thing that popped into my mind when you started talking about this, was that in Australia, we actually process our pigs at about half the age that the Americans do, which is one of the reasons that the ribs are just physically smaller. But that also explains why there's less of that intramuscular fat that you were just talking about, the striations as well.
Yes, and also, I mean, the grass-fed movement in this country, you know, they did really good marketing on grass-fed beef and how grass-fed beef is tastier. And, you know, if you get enough rain and your grass is richer, yes, I agree with that. But, you know, when you don't have enough richness in the grass, you need to augment the feeding with grain, you know, and you need to build up some fat within the beasts, you know. Tasmania, where it rains a lot and the grass is richer, you look at, you know, some of their grass-fed product and it looks like it could be fed on grain because the grass is richer. If it's drier, there's not going to be enough nutrients and enough fats within the grass and the grazing regime for the cattle to actually put on weight.
Yeah, well, that is true. I mean, we don't have the boundless grass plains that the Americans do. I mean, 85% of the country's red desert. You can't grow any grass at all.
Exactly right.
So you mentioned brisket and pork ribs there. Now, you did touch briefly there on chicken, and you said
Yes.
that when it comes to chicken, you really believe that you get what you pay for. What do you look for when you're looking for chicken?
Well, look, there's a lot of marketing rubbish out there with chicken. You know, I'm looking for the chicken of my choice is something that doesn't have hormones, preferably free range, maybe organic if I can get it as well. You know, but birds that are not fed hormones and chemicals is probably really high up there on my list. Battery chickens, not good. You know, chicken that has pasture areas that can run around, and, you know, I'm not talking about vegetarian chickens, because they talk about that a lot. And they say, you know, you should have chickens that are vegetarian. Well, if a chicken runs around and eats worms, it's not a vegetarian chicken. It's not as healthy. It's being fed grains and it's being kept somewhere where it can't eat worms, right? But a healthy chicken that runs around will peck at the ground and eat worms and peck at whatever's there. So that's kind of what I look for, free range, hormone free, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, I grew up on a farm and we had chickens and we just let them be chickens. And
Yep,
I can
pretty
tell
much.
you they are definitely not vegetarians.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But, you know, there's some people that will advertise vegetarian chickens. And, you know, somebody goes, oh, that sounds great. But when you stop and think about it, maybe not.
No, definitely not. So, okay, so then you're obviously right into your side dishes. So we've lined up our meats. We know what we're looking for with our meats. What do you look for in your side dish ingredients?
Well, again, quality vegetables in season, fruits and vegetables in season. You know, we're talking about tomatoes, right? You know, so your supermarket tomatoes are a variety of tomato that can be put into cold storage. And when you get it in the supermarket, it might have been in cold storage for 3 to 6 months. Whereas you go to farmer's market, you know, it's fresher and comes off somebody's land. And often what my general rule of thumb is, if it smells good, it's good. You know, if you can smell the tomato and it smells of tomato, you're good. I'll walk past some vegetables, and if it smells like it's ripe and it's in season, you can tell, you know. And if the vegetable is not in season or it's been in storage and it's not at its best, it just smells of nothing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love a good summer mango. And that's
Yes.
exactly how I pick my mangoes at the markets. I walk through and I pick it up and I sniff it.
Yep, cantaloupe, watermelon, all, any peaches and nectarines were in summer. So, you walk through the markets and you just get bombarded by these smells, So, and sometimes the supermarkets are better for certain things because they just go through a massive volume, But seasonal fruit and vegetables, not as much.
So at Southern Grace Diner then, is your menu seasonal?
Yes, absolutely. The side dishes change every week based on what's available and what's at its best. And that's kind of the guiding light, if you would, the guiding vision of what I'm doing is that it's seasonal and not only because it's cheaper when it's in season, but it's at its best.
Mate, that is beautiful. I love the sound of that. And it sounds like you're doing a lot to support local farmers and markets and all that sort of stuff as well. So points all around for that.
Well, I think, it becomes a whole thing. If we support each other and the small businesses support small businesses, everybody does well, that old adage of, the CEO doesn't need another beach house, whereas the small producers, they all need, school fees, I think that's very relevant.
Definitely. Now that's a beautiful point to sort of wrap up this episode, mate. You've told us so much and you've held nothing back. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to throw the studio open to you now, and I'm going to say give some shout outs to whoever you want to give shout outs to, and tell everybody where they can track you down on the internet.
Well, the shout outs go out to all the barbecue family, because we all get there together and we all help each other out. So there's far too many people to mention one by one. You can find me on social media, not Twitter. Temples of Barbecue, Twitter's dead. Temples of Barbecue, Southern Grace Diner, and Big Boy Barbecue, that's Big Boy BBQ, Instagram and Facebook.
Beautiful. All right, look, I'm going to say just one more time, thank you very much for coming on the show. I've had a ripper of a time and I've loved having you here.
Thanks for having me again, Ben. Much appreciated.
So there you have it, folks. That wraps up episode 6 of season 7. Lance Rosen from that big list: Big Boy Barbecue competition team, Big Boy Barbecue bricks and mortar, Southern Grace Diner bricks and mortar, Temples of Barbecue awarded cookbook, and so much more. How good does Camp Brisket sound? Seriously. If that's not on your bucket list, put it on and I'll see you there next year. I don't know how I'm going to make sure I get my name drawn. I'm going to have to, I don't know. I don't even want to say it, but I'm going to do it. I'd have to get there. It sounds phenomenal. So huge shout out to Lance for joining me in the confessional, and a big thank you for taking the time. A big thank you to him for taking the time to share his stories with us. And so that's it for today's show. So do me a favor, tell a friend about the show, and make sure you invite them to the Smoking Hot Confessions barbecue community on Facebook. We're very welcoming and we love having new people join us. So until next time, take care of each other and keep on queuing.
Thanks for listening to the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. Head on over to smokinghotconfessions.com for recipes, tips, and Ben's own confessions.